Hi and welcome to this overview. In this video we're looking at a Seiko 6138. This particular watch has been sent to me for just a general check over and a possible problem with the Chrono, which currently works and resets okay, as you can see, but it does have a little bit of a problem sticking. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to leave this running and see if the problem occurs. It has been sticking around, it was sticking around the 15-second mark, and I asked that it was left running when sent to me, just to keep it running and see if that helped it free up any. I have been, this has been sat here a few hours while I got round to filming this, and it's been sticking on and off intermittently and not always at the same point, although the original video I was showing it sticking around the 15-second mark, and when it did stick, a little shake was seeing it continue to run, and the problem was clearly that it is something is sticking when the chronograph is running and it's running out of power. It's I'm assuming stopping the balance. I will take the back off to verify that, but it seems to be running at the moment. But as I say, I'm going to pop it on the Timegrapher and we'll take a look at the readings. It's got a very nice bracelet. I don't know if that's the original Seiko one that this would have come with. I'm not an expert on Seiko's vintage or otherwise, but I do think it's a lovely looking watch, and it does look as if it's had a little bit of polishing over the years, because the edges of the case here are usually more sharply defined, but not in a bad way. It's, you know, it's in very good condition and it's a really nice looking watch, as said. So, now there we go, that's interesting. Now, as I turned it over to face down position, it must have stopped just there. As you can see, the chronograph has stopped. Give that little shake to get the balance going and off it goes again. So just out of curiosity, I'm just going to pop that face down again for a moment. And it's still going there, so I need to look into that a little bit more extensively, but just first and foremost, I'm going to pop it on the Timegrapher, first of all with the chronograph not running, and give that a wind to make sure that the mainspring is fully wound. This is a hand winding movement as well as automatic, unlike the 6139. Just very quickly before we go to the Timegrapher, I have just noticed that because I was focusing so much on the center sweep hand, that the upper subdial hand is not resetting to 0 and in fact not moving. It's currently at the 3-hour position, which presumably, I don't know if this means it has been moving around with as the sweep's been counting, because the chronograph was engaged when it was shipped to me, but it's certainly not resetting to 0. So once I've checked, had a visual check, checked the Timegrapher, had a visual check inside the case and what have you, at that point what I'm going to do is actually leave it running overnight and see if this upper subdial does move, because it certainly seems to be stuck somehow. But I'm just going to leave that running for a couple of minutes so that the lower subdial clicks round, and then we'll try another reset on that. So now we can see that the lower subdial is indeed turning, counting each minute on the half-hour timer. So I'm just going to stop the chronograph and we'll reset to 0. And both the sweep second and the lower subdial snapped back to 0, no problem. But the upper dial did not. I'm just going to move that hand out of the way just on the off chance that that might have been stopping it for some reason, although I doubt it very much. There looks like there's plenty of clearance there. And indeed that doesn't look to be resetting. So I'm just going to pop this on the Timegrapher just now, and then we'll take a look inside the case back. Now I'm assuming the lift angle is 53 degrees as it is for the 6139, I believe. I can always double check that later, but just for the moment I'm just looking at the trace to see what it's looking like. So dial up, we've got a reasonably respectable 222 degrees amplitude, if this is reading true, of course. A low beat error, 0.1 milliseconds and minus 20 seconds per day, which is not bad. I mean, Seikos are known for having a lower amplitude anyway, so 220-ish, 230 is not too bad. So that's dial up. Dial down is a little bit more level, and we'll see what the amplitude does when it corrects itself. Zero beat error, amplitude seems to be sticking around about 230 and minus 5 seconds per day, so that's looking quite good. Pendant down, let's just start that again so you can see it more cleanly. Got a little bit more beat error, but a nice straight trace and a good reading on both the input and exit palettes. So slightly lower amplitude, which is common in side-on positions anyway, because obviously there's more friction, there's more contact, rather than the pivot points acting directly on the jewels, but still over 200, so it's not too bad. And let's try pendant right. The three positions I typically time for are dial up, pendant down and pendant right, because those are, apologies, I'll just start that again because the watch just slipped out, it's quite heavy. I just want to make sure it's getting a fair reading on the graph. Pendant right, we've got amplitudes back up a little, and beat error about the same as pendant down and a decent rate. So it's got a nice clean trace. This is with the chronograph not running, but it's running quite respectably with a nice clean trace in the three main positions that I typically use, which are dial up, pendant down and pendant right. I also check pendant up if the person happens to be a right wrist wearer, so just pop that into pendant up position. And we have a slight drop in amplitude, but all about the same, so it's actually running quite nice and cleanly overall. So what I'm going to do just now is stop that just for a moment, and I'm going to pop this back into dial up position where I can access the buttons. We'll start that off, and then I'm going to start the chronograph and we'll see what impact it has. It shouldn't actually affect the running that much on these. So we've got 240 amplitude, 0.1 millisecond beat error and minus 9 seconds. Switch the chronograph on now. And we've got a gain in timekeeping, which tells me that the amplitude has just dropped dramatically. Let's wait for that amplitude to try and catch up. Now it's saying 234 degrees. There's no way that that amplitude is running at 232 degrees, 230 odd degrees. Now that's interesting. That's actually levelled back out, and that's just as the sweep second has gotten around to about the 40-second mark. So between the 15-second and the 40-second mark roughly is where this peak shot up there, which indicates a drop in amplitude, which indicates some kind of drag, which obviously is drag that's being induced by the clutch of the chronograph, because it is running quite cleanly with the chronograph disengaged. Now we're just coming around to the 15-second mark again, and yeah, there again you can see the peak rising there, and I suspect we'll be able to visually see this when I take the case back off. But this normally, when this happens, this normally indicates, okay, and it stopped completely at that point. Just give that a little jiggle, and off it goes again. And it should now be starting to level out. It's coming up to the 40-second mark, and sure enough it's just leveling out. You can just see the line up at the top of the screen there. I'm going to have to do a separate video on Timegraphers. These Weishi Timegraphers are very, very good. They're brilliant value for money, and they are very, very good. However, they are not infallible, and quite often you can get something like this, which is given an amplitude reading of 226 degrees that you can see here. The problem with that is I can almost guarantee that this balance wheel is nowhere near that. Most likely it's probably managing about 100 and probably even less than 180 degrees at this point. So they're not infallible, and it's always essential to do a visual check as well. So you can see it's just stopped again. I'm going to try it just one last position and dial down, and see if we can get a reading there. Let me try, let me just flip the watch on the stand. It would probably be easier than, because it is quite a heavy watch, so trying to keep it all level is a little tricky. So this is dialed down. And again, we're getting big peaks and then it's leveling out. And what's happening here is the balance is slowing and then picking up again. So there's something that's creating drag between a certain part of the sweep. So that's enough the Timegrapher. There's definitely something amiss there with the chronograph running. I'm just going to reset that just now. So that's the chronograph off. That should then start to even back out again, and the amplitude should pick up a little, which it's doing just now, as you can see. So let's get the case back off and take a look inside of it. I've just undone the link on the strap so we can get to that, and loosened off the case back. Just spin that off the last few notches, and inside there we can see looks nice and clean, and that balance is beating away quite merrily. I'm just going to pop the rotor off. A little better what's going on. You can see the column wheel over here that actuates the chronograph mechanism. Balance is beating away nice and strongly with the chrono disengaged, so I'm just going to start that. And in fact, what I'm going to do, if I start mine at the same time, so I can kind of time what's happening and when. And I'm expecting, yeah, I can see that balance slowing down already. And right about the 15-second mark, as you can see there, is exactly where that stopped. Let me just give that a bit of an encouraging puff of air. See if I can get that going again. What I'm expecting to see is about the 45-second mark, because obviously it did stop for a few seconds. About the 45-second mark, oh, excuse the mucky mark on my crystal there. I'm expecting to see that pick up again, which is what it did in dial up position, and it's not. It's probably stopped a little longer than I thought actually. No, it's not liking that at all, is it? So what I'm going to do now is just scoot in close, but stop that again, and as you can see, off it goes. I'm going to scoot in close so you can see that up close and see how it all works. Here we are. I'm just going to use the point of my tweezers to sort of point out things. We've got the column wheel that actuates the chronograph here, and you can see when I press the chronograph buttons the operation of the levers and see how that works, start and stop. But if you watch the balance wheel, I'll start that, and you can see that slowing. So there's definitely some drag occurring with the chronograph engaged. So it's to do with the clutch on the chronograph column, I think. And if I disengage it, off it goes again, and it's beating quite nicely. So we'll reset that. So yes, you can see there, and it looks quite clean. As I said, there's a little evidence of over lubrication, but only slightly. It's not much. It's just slightly overzealous lubrication, if anything, I think. But especially down here on these pivot points, there's a bit too much excess grease on these. But it's not like it's swimming in the stuff, and it does look quite nice and clean inside. So it's not that it has that anything's been done improperly to it. It might just be that the chronograph wheel has not been properly lubricated. There may be something else, but with how well the watch runs otherwise with the chronograph disengaged, I'm inclined to think it's something else. But I am curious as to why this upper subdial is not returning to 0, although it does seem to have moved on a little further from the 3-hour mark just now. So that's what we're looking at the moment. I'm not going to delve any further into this right at this moment in time. I need to get this video up and get a little bit of feedback to the owner, and sort of discuss what's what with this, and we'll see what we can do. I don't think it's in need of a full strip and service or anything that dramatic, because as I say, it does look very clean. It looks like it might even have been done not that long ago, with the cleanliness of the grease that's visible on there. And it could simply be that either the wrong type of grease or a little too much has been used or something like that. But we'll see where we go from there. Pop the case back on, and that's where we're at with that one. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.